When you hear the name Jeffrey Epstein, it's impossible not to think of some of the most awful crimes imaginable. But this explainer, it's not just about what he did. We're going to dig into how he was able to do it. We're going to try and untangle this incredibly complex web that gave him all that power.
I mean, let's be honest, we've all seen the headlines. We know the stories of abuse and exploitation. It's this really dark chapter that has somehow touched some of the most powerful people on the entire planet.
And that's the real question, isn't it? How does a guy with no obvious business, no big product, no world-changing idea end up with the kind of wealth and connections to get away with so much for so long?
You know, they always say it's the golden rule of any investigation, and that is exactly where our story has to begin. If we want to really understand the Epstein network, first, we've got to understand his finances.
And this brings us right to the heart of the Epstein paradox, a man living the life of a billionaire, but with absolutely no clear, legitimate way he could have earned it.
Just look at this jump. It's wild. Back in the 80s, Epstein is a college dropout, a math teacher who can't even afford his own apartment. But then, fast forward just a decade or so, and he owns one of the biggest private homes in Manhattan and is cruising towards a net worth of over $600 million. I mean, how on earth does that happen?
Well, his early days give us a bit of a clue. He gets involved with a guy named Stephen Hoffenberg in what turned out to be a massive $450 million Ponzi scheme. Now, when the whole thing comes crashing down, Hoffenberg, the guy in charge, he gets 20 years in prison. But Epstein, the guy Hoffenberg called the actual architect of the scam, he walks away, completely free. No charges, no fine, not a single day in jail. Nothing.
So right away, this is a huge red flag. You have to ask yourself, who was protecting him, even way back then? It really suggests that Epstein was already valuable to someone powerful enough to make a multi-million-dollar fraud case just go away.
Okay, so with his legal problems mysteriously vanishing, Epstein needed two things to really start building his empire: a truly insane amount of money and a golden ticket into the world of the global elite.
And wouldn't you know it, he found both. The first pillar of his power, the money, it came from one single, incredibly wealthy person.
And that person was Les Wexner, the billionaire behind huge brands like Victoria's Secret. In a move that, to this day, just baffles financial experts. Wexner, who was known for being super cautious, gave Epstein complete power of attorney over his entire multi-billion-dollar fortune. Now that meant Epstein could do whatever he wanted with Wexner's money, invest it, spend it, move it, as if it was his own, with zero oversight.
And you can see the results right here. Epstein wasn't just managing money. He was basically acquiring a billionaire's life. He gets this massive Manhattan mansion, a private Boeing 727 jet, the one later nicknamed the Lolita Express, and on top of all that, reports show over $200 million flowed directly into his own accounts. So the takeaway here is he now had basically unlimited cash.
But you know, money alone doesn't buy you a seat at the table with world leaders and royalty. For that, he needed the second pillar of his power, Ghislaine Maxwell. And really, it was this perfect chilling merger. You had Epstein with all this new money but zero social standing, and then you had Ghislaine, daughter of a famous media mogul and spy, who had all the elite connections in the world but no money after her father's death. Together, they had the whole package.
So, with the money and the network firmly in place, the true, horrifying purpose of their partnership starts to become crystal clear: to create this sophisticated system of entrapment, with his private island sitting right at the very center of it all.
For the young girls, Ghislaine Maxwell had this methodical, predatory system. First, she'd act like a cool older sister, befriending vulnerable girls to earn their trust. Then, she would slowly start to push the boundaries, normalizing adult and sexual situations. From there, it became guided participation, where she'd introduce them to Epstein. And the final step was a kind of psychological control that left these victims completely confused and dependent. It was just horribly calculated.
And at the same time, they were running this parallel system to trap the powerful and famous. Epstein would get his hooks in by donating to their favorite charities or solving some financial problem for them. Then came the invitation to the island. Once they were there, they were compromised, often with the very same girls Maxwell had recruited. And here's the final, most important step. They secretly recorded everything.
Now, this whole setup, systematically recording powerful people, using sexual blackmail to control them, that's not just the behavior of a sick criminal. It has all the hallmarks of an intelligence operation.
There's actually a word for this in the spy world: compromise. It's a classic tactic. You collect damaging, compromising material on a target so you can blackmail them or just make sure they stay loyal. So Epstein wasn't just collecting victims. He was collecting leverage on some of the most powerful people in the world.
And when you start connecting the dots, the evidence for this theory is, well, it's pretty compelling. Think about it. His strange ability to escape prosecution early on, his known connections to an arms dealer who was an asset for MI6 and the CIA, the fact that Ghislaine's own father, Robert Maxwell, was a notorious spy from multiple countries, and of course, the secret cameras and thousands of hours of recordings. It's no wonder a former Israeli agent came right out and said it. Epstein was a spy.
A man who has that much dirt on that many powerful people is quite possibly the most dangerous man in the world. And that brings us to the final, deeply disturbing chapter of his life, and his death.
Let's just walk through the night he died in one of America's most secure federal jails. A whole series of basically impossible coincidences all happened at once. He was taken off suicide watch way too early. His cellmate was moved out, which is against protocol. The two guards who were supposed to be watching him both fell asleep. And get this, both cameras pointed at his cell door mysteriously malfunctioned at the exact same time. The odds of all of that happening randomly are just astronomical.
And it wasn't just the strange circumstances. The physical evidence itself is highly suspicious. Dr. Michael Baden, a world-famous forensic pathologist hired by Epstein's own family, he looked at the autopsy and concluded that the injuries, especially a broken hyoid bone in his neck, were much more consistent with someone being strangled than with a suicide.
So what are we left with? We have a man who built an entire empire on blackmail, who held the darkest secrets of the global elite, and who died under the most unbelievable and suspicious circumstances you could possibly imagine. The evidence doesn't just ask the question, it's screaming it. Was Jeffrey Epstein silenced before he could ever talk?